think since we have a natural pause, that I'll go ahead and get started. I know that some people are still trying to make their way in, but it may take a while tonight, so I want to go ahead and get started so we can respect everyone's time. My name is Angie Hatton. I'm chair of the Kentucky Public Service Commission. With me tonight is Commissioner Andrew Wood. Commissioner Mary Pat Regan could not join us, and also Juergens Fansel, who is an attorney with the PSC, and Kenya Stump, who is Executive Director of the Office of Energy Policy for Kentucky. So what we'll do is we'll have a couple of short presentations, one from Juergens, just to sort of tell you the PSC's role, and then we'll have a little bit longer presentation from Kenya about nuclear energy in general, and then we're going to take public comment. So the role of the Kentucky Public Service Commission is just to seek information. We intend to be neutral on this issue. We were ordered by the Kentucky Legislature from Senate Joint Resolution 140 to study nuclear energy generation and to get ready to regulate it if it happens. At this point, we've not had anyone apply for a license to build nuclear generation in Kentucky, but if it happens, our mandate from the legislature is to learn about it and get ready to regulate it if it happens. So that's the Public Service Commission's role. But to tell you a little bit more about that, I'll ask Juergens Fansel to take over.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see all of you here and to see all the participation. As Chair Hatton said, I'm an attorney with the Public Service Commission, and my presentation is going to be dry and hopefully over very quickly. It's intended to give you all just a little bit of an overview about the actual process that's happening at the Public Service Commission following the passage of Senate Joint Resolution 140. On this first slide, you'll see the case number 2025-00186. You'll have an opportunity to look at it here, and then there's a slide with some contact information later on. That number is just important if you want to submit comments either by email or in the mail. So if that's something you'd like to do, we encourage you to write that down, as you'll need it at the top of whatever comments you send us in whatever form you send it to us, so that we can put it in the record and read it. All right, so as said, we are going to have a couple presentations tonight. The first one is mine, and then obviously Kenya will give a nuclear energy overview presentation. Following that period, we'll be taking public comments, and the commissioners will be listening. Everybody will have a period of time to speak. One thing we just note is that this is going to be recorded, and it's going to be placed into the case record that is public. So everybody who speak here will have that and will be able to review it. And excuse me, one last thing is just because of how the PSC operates, there are some limits to the kinds of questions that can be answered, as we're a quasi-judicial agency, and generally speaking, we operate through orders and reports and sort of other documents. So just a background for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the Public Service Commission. It was founded in 1934. As I just said, it's a quasi-judicial 3-member body that's appointed by the governor, and then it is confirmed, those members are confirmed by the Senate. It is responsible for approximately 1,100 utilities around the state. A lot of those are water utilities, but obviously that includes gas, electric, and sort of transmission, distribution, and other utilities that operate within the state. Everything that happens at the commission is dictated by statute or by regulations that are passed pursuant to another statute. So our authority is limited to that. A little bit about what happened here. So the Senate Joint Resolution 140 was passed in 2024, and it directed the PSC to make all staffing, organizational, and administrative preparations necessary to be ready to discharge our duties relating to the application for siting, construction, and oversight of nuclear energy facilities, because currently there is not such facility in the state. So this investigation was opened up to follow through and house all of the PSC investigation following that joint resolution. So in addition to that mandate, there are a couple things that Senate Joint Resolution 140 expressly informed the commission to do. One of those was to identify the kind of regulatory staff that states who do currently regulate nuclear facilities have, to look for things like their qualifications, their experience. It directed us to make relationships to contract with organizations which are experienced with nuclear energy, so that if a case is filed, there will be no delay or gap in expertise to do oversight. Additionally, it directed us to train staff within the PSC on nuclear energy issues and oversight. And finally, the PSC was directed to look at all the regulations and statutes that apply to the organization to make sure that nuclear energy is on level footing with all the other generation resources. I told you guys this was going to be dry. So what has happened so far? There have been invitations for comments from experts in and around the state, from national experts. We've had several informal conferences where utilities and interested parties and interveners, different interest groups, have spoken at length about a number of issues related to nuclear energy. And then what is currently going on is a tour around the state for 6 public comment meetings. This is our 4th. And then, of course, April 6th will be in Northern Kentucky, and then April 8th will be in Bowling Green. And I know I don't have the dates and the times and the locations. They are all on the website. So if you just go to our PSC website, you'll be able to find those very easily. Finally, there will be a technical conference May 12th and 13th held in Frankfurt that will be inviting a lot of experts to come and speak and provide more detailed information pursuant to nuclear energy. So this is a page. I'll leave this up for just a second for those of you who are interested in leaving comments. Our website is psc.ky.gov. As I stated before, there are 2 ways to leave public comments, and they will be placed into the record. Staff will review them. They will be read. The first way is by email, and that's psc.comment@ky.gov. And the second way is to mail it, and the address there is 211 Sauer Boulevard, Frankfort, Kentucky, 40601. All we ask is that you use the case number that I mentioned earlier, 2025-00186, somewhere at the top of your comment, whether that's a physical copy or in your email header. That way, the filing staff know to put it in that case, and then we can review it. There's no chance that it'll be mixed up or anything. So those are the 2 ways. If there are questions about the process itself, I'm happy to try to answer as much of that as I can. But also, our record is entirely public, and you will be able to find all of the information and all the work that's been done so far just by looking through the case record. Okay, I see no hands. And with that, I think it is time to hand it over to Kenya for a much more interesting presentation. Thank you.
Well, we'll see. I think we'll get this up and running soon. Okay. Wow. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for taking time away from your family, your friends, your other commitments that you have to lend your voices to this important topic for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. My name is Kenya Stump. I'm the Executive Director of Kentucky's Office of Energy Policy. I am native to Muhlenberg County, right up the road. I went to school at Western for a chemistry degree there and did my graduate work in environmental science and public administration from Indiana University and University of Kentucky. Don't hold the IU against me. I was only there for 2 years and I came back. But I'm really glad to be here. I'm really glad that we're here in Paducah. I'm glad to be back in Western Kentucky. I was we stopped by the area development district earlier today, and I was like, I breathe a lot easier when I come to the West. It feels most like home to me. So we're glad to be here, and glad that you're here to have your perspective and voices into this conversation. I would like to acknowledge, very happy to also have the spillover people. I can see them, the spillover room, acknowledging them as well. So we have people in the spillover rooms as well. Before we get into public comment, we're going to go through a little bit more in detail why we are here and why is Kentucky talking about nuclear energy. And that goes into a little bit more about why are we talking about this as a nation as well. It's probably going to be a little bit more exciting than Juergen's, no offense. I do have some pictures and charts, so that helps. And I'm not a lawyer. Also fair. But we're going to get through this. Hopefully, it will help spur you to lend your voice into this conversation. If you do not have a comment, you see something in the presentation and you want to express your perspective on that, we would love to hear your voice on this issue. So, starting from the basics, we're here to talk about fission for the most part today. Fission is the splitting of a uranium atom that really releases a significant amount of energy, and that is the power, literally, behind nuclear energy. Fission is commercially available today, and we do have reactors operating in that capacity. Fusion is the power of the sun. That is where we're combining two hydrogen atoms for helium and creating a lot of energy that way. Fusion technology is in development, is not commercially available, but that's part of the conversation. The bulk of the conversation today is really about fission and how we're tasked with preparing for a future where we could have power production via fission and the associated industries with that. So why nuclear? Why is nuclear such a topic? It really comes down to that energy density when we compare that to other fuels. A typical uranium fuel pellet is about the size of your fingernail. And when we look at the energy output from that, that's the equivalent to about 1 ton of coal, 149 gallons of oil, or 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas. It's energy dense, which means it's also less land intensive than some of the other technologies. For example, a typical nuclear power plant, let's say it's 1 gigawatt, 1,000 megawatts, may take a couple of hundred acres. If we were to look on, let's say, the renewable side, you're looking at the same kind of energy production from around 25,000 acres. So it's energy dense, it's less land intensive, and it tends to be a highly reliable source of electricity production. We'll talk a little bit more about that. It's not perfect, and that's why we're here to talk about all the aspects that come with making power from fission. I do need to tell you, the Office of Energy Policy, I did skip that. The Office of Energy Policy is located in Frankfort at Kentucky's Energy and Environment Cabinet. We are non-regulatory. I am not the PSC. I don't regulate anyone. I work in 3 main areas. Energy security. So if there's a disruption, we staff the Emergency Operations Center. We respond to energy emergencies. We work in energy affordability, and we work in energy education. We also work in all fuels. I work in coal, natural gas, oil, propane, renewables, nuclear, hydrogen, and any other kind of emerging fuel or technology. So at the Office of Energy Policy, we're in all of the above office. We do work in all of the fuels across the state. We're here today to help lend a perspective on nuclear specific as it relates to the directive in the resolution for the PSC. History is a very important context to this topic. We'll go back to the last 75 years where nuclear power has really lent itself through the U.S. Naval Nuclear Program, 273 reactors successfully operating. That's the Nimitz aircraft carrier and one of our nuclear submarines. So it really began with our naval operations, and we'll go into a little bit more about that history and lessons learned that would be relevant to the conversation today. But really, let's look at the reactor side. So we have that fission reaction, which we said releases a significant amount of energy. That energy creates heat. Heat makes steam. Steam goes through a turbine and a generator, and you get electricity. And then that flows to the grid, and that goes to your homes and businesses and industry. That heat also can be used for adjacent industrial processes or for thermal energy storage. This is a very similar schematic to a coal-fired power plant or a natural gas power plant or even a fuel oil power plant. The main difference, and it is a significant difference, is on the front end, we have the nuclear reaction that generates the energy. With coal and gas, we actually combust those fuels to create that energy to make the heat. But the balance of equipment is basically the same outside of the nuclear reactor. But today, we're just not here to talk about reactors. And specifically, Paducah has a long history in the fuel and has current activity on the fuel cycle side. So when we look at nuclear energy, we look at a spectrum of opportunities for potential economic development. It begins similar to, it's very similar actually to our coal industry. It's an extractive industry. It begins with mining of the uranium, conversion, enrichment, fuel assembly, and then the fuel assemblies go into the reactor, power production, and then you have waste byproducts that we have to deal with, and that's a significant issue for the nuclear industry, and the waste management after that. So when we talk about nuclear energy economic development, it's not just about power production, although the PSC's jurisdiction really lends itself on the power production side. But economic development can happen from the fuel on the front end to the waste management on the back end and the reactor and power production in the middle. But why are we really here today, and why is the nation talking about nuclear energy? Why is there a resurgence today? First, we've had some significant technological innovations that have brought the reactor technology outside of conventional nuclear reactors, and we'll go through what that looks like today and the potential for that. One of the main reasons we're talking about nuclear energy is really it relates to the demand for electricity has been increasing, and that demand requires a source that can provide almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of power production. Nuclear power production tends to have the highest capacity factor and the highest operating rates compared to other fuels. Kentucky is really looking at this from the perspective is we do have a history, and that history is not just here in Paducah. We do have a history around nuclear. That history colors our conversation about what the future may look like in Kentucky. But Kentucky's industry has also been built on highly reliable, low-cost electricity, which has been essential for our economic development. One of the other main reasons why nationwide there's a resurgence in nuclear power is at the power production site. It is considered to be a zero carbon, low emission source, and it can help bring on more renewables and balance the renewables coming into the system. That said, while everyone likes to talk about emissions, nuclear energy does have a significant impact on the environment in other ways, and that's what we're here to talk about and to hear your perspectives on that. The other main reason why we are here to hear your voices and in this important conversation is the byproducts of that fission are highly radioactive, and as I mentioned, nuclear power production produces spent fuel and waste that has to be managed, and that's a significant issue for discussion nationwide and in each and every state across the nation that's looking at this issue. In general, when we look at other types of power production, nuclear energy tends to be one of the safest. However, the consequences of an accident can be extremely severe, and we have to look at how do we regulate and control that potential. Today, new nuclear is very expensive, but those costs tend to be spread over a long time compared to other generation technologies, 80 plus years. So they tend to have higher life cycles than other sources of generation. But we're here to talk about lessons learned from building nuclear power in the United States. And nuclear power generation brings up fears about the spread of nuclear weapons, technology, and materials. We're seeing that today with the current geopolitical conflict in Iran and the issues around the safe management of that nuclear material. So a lot to think about when we talk about looking at nuclear energy in Kentucky. So you should be proud, because I do highlight you in other parts of the state, and other parts of the state are not as familiar as Paducah is with the history. In the United States, nuclear power provides 18% of our electricity generation. We import generally, now this changes with geopolitical issues, but in general, we do import uranium from other countries. That has a energy security risk to it, which is why we're seeing a drive to more domestic nuclear fuel production for our existing reactor fleet. Kentucky, as the chair said, we do not produce electricity from nuclear energy, but due to our grid connectivity to TVA, the regional transmission organizations, we do consume electricity from nuclear energy in Kentucky. This is our current reactor fleet. So these are conventional nuclear reactors in the United States. We have 94 reactors operating all around us, significant portion in the southeast, the northeast, and the Midwest. These are our existing reactor fleets, which are currently, for the most part, extending their life cycles or going through restarts and relicensing through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And that fleet provides 18% of the U.S.'s electricity production. But we have significant lessons from the past. One of those is here, the Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant. Provides an important lesson in enrichment and management of nuclear materials, but you're not alone. The chair mentioned we started off in Moorhead, Kentucky. Maxey Flat is a Superfund site that is currently inactive, but is a low-level radioactive waste disposal in eastern Kentucky. Both of these sites are really the basis for our modern federal environmental hazardous waste and nuclear regulations. And these sites provided direct input into how we manage and control radioactive material today. But who regulates nuclear energy? The chair mentioned the PSC. I'm going to jump to the PSC first. The Kentucky Public Service Commission has jurisdiction over Kentucky's electricity providers. But that said, they do not regulate the Tennessee Valley Authority or municipal power entities such as like Paducah Power would not be regulated by the PSC. They regulate Louisville Gas and Electric, KU, Kentucky Power, Duke Energy, Big Rivers up the road, and the distribution co-ops, but not those of the Tennessee Valley Authority or the munis. They also have oversight over merchant plants as well, such as we have a siting board associated with the PSC that looks at large solar projects that sell into the wholesale market. But on the nuclear side, for the most part, the NRC regulates most nuclear reactors that are commercial, material facilities, and materials. There are a few exceptions where the DOE would regulate research reactors or research facilities. But if you're a commercial reactor in commercial operation, your first authority would be the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. If you're a power company regulated by the PSC and you want to build a nuclear power plant in Kentucky, that project would have to come before the PSC, and they would look at that regulatory oversight and whether or not it met their criteria to move forward. I said that right, Jurgens, right? Yeah, I always have to check with the lawyer first. So let's look at nuclear power today versus that map of the existing fleet. The existing fleet is composed of what we call conventional nuclear reactors. Here's an example of one today. This is Sequoia. It's a little over 2,000 megawatts. It's a pressurized light water reactor. I mentioned earlier the reason why the nation's really talking about the resurgence in nuclear is because of the development of what we call advanced nuclear energy reactors. This is an example here of TerraPower. This is the Natrium reactor in Kemmerer, Wyoming. That's the site of a former coal power plant that is being backfitted with the TerraPower Natrium reactor. The difference, though, is size. TerraPower's reactor are considered a small modular reactor. This unit is a depiction of a 500 megawatt, not nearly as large as the Sequoia plant, but is very energy dense. So Sequoia's plant is around 500 acres. The TerraPower Natrium reactor would be around 30 acres. So a very different type of technology that we're looking at today in terms of advanced nuclear. That said, we do have large reactors that are considered advanced nuclear. Westinghouse's AP1000 unit, that's a 1,000 megawatt unit. It is considered an advanced reactor, not a small modular reactor, but it is considered in a class of advanced reactors. So size matters. Like I mentioned, typical large reactors are 1,000 megawatts in size or more. Advanced reactors come in sizes, what we call the small modular reactors, a couple 100 megawatts. And now we have micro reactors that are the size of a truck. Fort Campbell down the road has been selected as a potential recipient of a microreactor through the U.S. Army's Janus program. And also, compared to the large reactors, small modular reactors and the microreactors tend to offer a little bit more flexibility on size, can have some additional grid services, can operate a little bit more flexible, and can also store energy if we're looking at something like a molten salt storage component as well. They can produce hydrogen. They can work in applications such as desalination in other parts of the world. A lot of different type of applications than what we normally see from a large reactor. And we're seeing companies like Nucor Steel, Dow Chemical, and other heavy industry look at potential small modular reactors or micro reactors as potential co-location with heavy industry. So just a summary, because you don't get a chemistry degree without charts. And I can only put so many words on a page. In general, our existing fleet tends to be very conventional and large, but in the reactor technologies that we're looking at in the future can range in a variety of sizes. We also have different types of technology. Conventional fleets rely on water. We have new technologies that can rely on different types of cooling mechanisms and different types of pressures and different sizes. Our large reactors tend to be, again, large baseload power 24/7. Small modular reactors can act that way, but they can also act as load following and different grid support services. And the biggest difference that we're seeing today is that the safety approach with the advanced reactors goes from an active safety approach to a passive safety approach, which means they're utilizing the principles of physics and design as an inherent safety feature in the reactors, relying less on human intervention and more on the actual engineering and physics of the reactor. We have fuels that are new fuels that are also becoming more inherently safe, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But it has not gone well in all instances. Our newest reactor is the Vogtle reactor that came online in 2023. And what was wrong with that? Well, it was over budget and it never came in on time. But why was that? Vogtle had a series of issues with it. It was down with Georgia Power. I guess the easiest way to say the biggest issue with Vogtle is when they went to build the reactor, they didn't have a complete design. So it's like going to build your house, getting everything there, materials, supplies, and workers, and not having your blueprint correct. So we had an incomplete design. We didn't have a workforce who knew how to build reactors because we hadn't built a nuclear plant in around 40 years. We didn't have a supply chain on the parts and all of the equipment necessary for Vogtle. We had a lot of issues with regulatory oversight. I'm not going to get into that, but that was an issue to protect consumers and keep Georgia Power on budget. And so Vogtle is an important lesson in the conversation of if we are going to look at building a reactor. And this was an AP1000, so this was not a small modular reactor. This was a large reactor. Just to let you know, there are no operating advanced reactors in the United States. 3 are under construction. We have Kairos down in Tennessee. We have Kimmer, and I believe there's another one under construction as well. I did not include that map. That is in the United States. This is an international issue. There are builds ongoing internationally as well in other countries, but there are no current advanced reactors operational, SMRs operational in the United States. TerraPower just received their construction license from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The biggest issue, spent fuel management. This is the number one issue we have heard from public comment to date, and this is a spent fuel canister, what it looks like in size. I will say that is not me in that image. I would be significantly shorter than that young person in that picture. But just to give you an idea what we're looking at spent fuel rods that are encased and then encased in the concrete canister for storage. But let's get into it because I would expect that we're going to hear some comments around spent fuel management. As I said, you have a uranium pellet, and then those pellets get stacked, and it's like all of these little dangly bits are stacked together in an assembly. And so you stack all these pellets, and then they're kind of stacked in the assembly, and then the fuel rods are bunched up together, and you have your fuel assembly. That's then dropped into the reactor, and it goes through its fission processes and releases energy. After it's deemed to have been spent, it goes into cooling pools. And then 5 years, and so let's just acknowledge it takes 5 years or more to cool, and then it goes into its canister for storage at the nuclear reactor site. And let's talk about why we're storing it at the reactor site. We do that now because of the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. That is the regulation over spent fuel management in the U.S. There are others, but we're going to just talk about the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. It really supports the development of a deep geologic repository, and it directs the Department of Energy for that responsibility. The DOE has not been able to complete the mission that it's been assigned in the development of that final repository for spent nuclear fuel. The NRC is directed to license DOE to operate a repository if one can be found to meet the EPA standards and the other relevant requirements. There is no deep geologic repository authorized in the U.S. to date. So what do we do with the spent nuclear fuel that we have? The U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission determined that it's technically feasible and safe to store the spent nuclear fuel at the power reactor facility for an indefinite amount of time. We do not recycle or reprocess spent nuclear fuel in the U.S. France does that. And has actual final disposition plans for their waste from their reprocessing facility. We do not do that currently in the United States. This is an example. This is the Cook nuclear plant in Michigan, operated by AEP. And this represents the 49 years of operations of DC Cook, and that's what the spent fuel canisters look like for the Cook facility. But advanced reactors offer some different options. I talked about the fuel assembly. That fuel assembly is typical for conventional reactors. What we're looking here today is this is a new fuel type. It's a new, it looks like a gobstopper. That's my terminology. So it's the size of a gobstopper. Inside is your nuclear fuel. And then it's contained into, surrounded by a ceramic assembly. So it basically is a fuel that has its own containment built into the fuel pellet. And so you don't have those traditional fuel assemblies. Advanced reactors can operate on reduced or can produce reduced spent fuel volumes, and they have different types of centralized fuel storage and management. That said, while there may be advantages to the advanced reactors, it does not negate the need for a long-term solution for used fuel, spent fuel disposition in the United States. Host community considerations. That's why we're here, to hear about what are your concerns if you're looking at hosting, whether that be a reactor, a fuel facility, a waste management operation, power production, manufacturing. What are the things that you need to be aware of? I'm just going to let you look there for a minute while I take a drink. These projects tend to be very substantial in size, and communities have to think about all the changes. And I know we have some local judge executives and mayors here, so things that can all of a sudden be a shock to a community that requires extensive planning is, an extensive construction workforce. If all of a sudden you're faced with thousands of workers coming into your community, what does that mean to water and wastewater infrastructure, roads, housing, schools, all of that infrastructure needed to accommodate such a large workforce? A lot of support for small businesses is necessary to face those challenges. Road improvements, traffic changes, land use changes, property values will change, and those will not be uniform in the community. And a lot of need for increased community education, engagement, and potential legal assistance. And more importantly, you've got to look at additional costs for emergency response planning, personnel, and training as well. So a lot that kind of goes in with this project if you're looking at a large nuclear project in your community. That said, you get 60 to 80 plus years of tax revenue. That tends to be significant for a community. Some communities, that tax revenue can be 30 to 50% of the community's budget. So it is a long-term investment in the community. Good paying jobs, they tend to be trade jobs, electricians, plumbers, security workers, welders, but also average salaries are $70,000 to $125,000, depending on the type of work. It's not all nuclear engineers. In fact, you don't need as many as you would think. No offense if you're a nuclear engineer. So it really is an opportunity to bring in trades and look at that kind of workforce development in the community. With that kind of tax revenue over 60 to 80 years, you're obviously looking at significant opportunities for infrastructure improvements in the community. As we've seen in places like Oak Ridge, Idaho, the STEM and educational opportunities tend to multiply in those areas, but as well as ancillary businesses. For every $100 of nuclear power production, you generate an additional $50 of ancillary nuclear businesses and support businesses coming into the community. And finally, here in Paducah and with TVA, Shawnee's there, up the road, there's Paradise. If you are a community where you have an existing coal or natural gas power plant, reusing that infrastructure tends to make a lot of sense if you're looking at a potential replacement source of generation once that has gone through its life cycle. That's the case in Kemmerer, Wyoming. That is a coal power plant being backfit with the natrium reactor. So a lot to consider both on the pros and the cons if you're looking at hosting a facility. But how do you get nuclear ready? This also came from our legislature. The legislature provided a pathway where communities can be the first voice in raising the flag or not raising the flag if you want nuclear opportunities. We call it the nuclear ready designation, and communities can step up and voluntarily go through a process and determine, oh, hello, what's for dinner? So with that, the community goes through a process of having 2 public educational meetings. You have to have economic development sites recognized as being nuclear ready. Does that mean everything has to host a reactor? No. A community could decide that they just want to do manufacturing of, gaskets or widgets that go into the reactor or circuit boards. That could be a nuclear ready community where you're looking at supply chain manufacturing. You have the opportunity to think about, do you want it on the fuel side, such as Paducah? Do you want to be a reactor location? Do you just want to manufacture things for the nuclear industry? That's an option too. And then there's also the option on the waste side as well, in terms of as we have a better plan federally for final spent fuel disposition, potential reprocessing, do you want to be in that space as well? Once you go through that, you have to show us that you have local support through either the adoption of a resolution or the approval of a countywide ballot affirming readiness. Once you demonstrate those things, the Kentucky Nuclear Energy Development Authority will deem you as being nuclear ready, and that's your economic development flag. Basically, that sends it to the nuclear industry, and that says we're ready to start having discussions, whether that be supply chain, reactor development, or fuel. It really is a way for communities to have the voice first. And that's what we've seen is so important. So this is the opportunity for communities to take the step first and to signal what you want to achieve with your economic development goals. And not all communities will want to make this path, which is why it's your decision and your voices in the process. Here's information. We expect the Nuclear Energy Development Authority to release an application package for communities, but you do not have to wait for that to begin the process of stepping through this and starting in your community and the discussions. So with that, we've gone kind of from beginning to end. We've gone from fuel to reactor technology to what communities can do and host considerations. We've gone through some lessons learned. I think now I'll turn it over to the chair. We might have some ground rules before we go into a community listening session.
Thank you so much, Kenya and Juergens. And thank you, Dr. Reese, for hosting us here in your lovely facility. This is my second time here for an event, and we're so well treated, and it's such a nice place. And thanks to the local officials, it's great to see my friend Richard Heath here, and Mayor Bray and Judge Clymer. And I don't want to keep naming, Sandra, all the folks that have made us welcome. We appreciate it. We knew that Paducah would likely be our biggest public comment hearing, and it certainly has turned out that way. We do have 2 overflow rooms, so if anyone doesn't want to stand and you would like to go sit in the overflow room, you can still hear everything. And if you're more comfortable standing, as long as it's okay with Dr. Reese, it's okay with me. But there are 2 overflow rooms, and staff can direct you to where those are if you want to be seated. So we do put a 5-minute time limit on the comments, just because we want everybody to have an opportunity to speak. And if someone talks for 2 hours, it's not going to be fair to others who won't get a chance and have to leave. So we do put a 5-minute time limit on, but that's not intended to stop you from saying everything you want to say. And we do strongly encourage you to go ahead and send email or written comments. Those instructions are on our website. And if you do so, be sure and put that case number on that Juergens mentioned, which is 2025-00186. And we do read those comments, and then we'll give you an opportunity to express more than the 5 minutes. But we do want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I know that anytime we have issues like nuclear energy, there are strong emotions and opinions on both sides. We just ask that you be civil to one another, listen when other people are talking, and I'll make sure that the same happens for you as well. So I'm going to go through this list that you signed in as you came in, and I'm just going to call the names of the people who indicated yes, they wanted to provide comments. And when we get to the end, of all those yeses, I'll give anybody who put a question mark or a no an opportunity to change their mind. And if, as long as you want to talk, we'll stay here and listen. So, and that's the whole goal here. It's just to hear everyone's comments, to get the views of Kentuckians on the record in this investigation case before we ever see an application for nuclear energy in any form in Kentucky. So Commissioner Wood's going to be my timer. I'm going to make him my enforcer of the 5 minutes. But when I call your name, if you'll just come forward to this microphone right here, and we'll tell us your name and where you live, and then we'll start the timer. And again, if you didn't put yes and you change your mind, we will definitely give you the opportunity to speak at the end. If you hear something that triggers a question, if you just have a question that you want to put on the record, it doesn't have to be a speech, that's fine. We really want everybody to have an opportunity if you'd like to make a comment or have a question. So with that, the first person on my list who indicated yes, they wanted to speak, is Mark Donham. And if every time I call a name, if I don't see someone immediately get up, I will think maybe they're in the overflow room. So I'll give them an extra couple of minutes. But come, sir, tell us your name and where you live, and we'll get started.
My name is Mark Donham. I'm from Brookport, Illinois. I work here in Paducah. I was chair of the DOE Citizens Advisory Board for 6 years. I sat on the board for 8 years in what sometimes seems like another lifetime. But I have sat in on a lot of meetings over the years, and I have some knowledge of the site. I would say the public information campaign about this has not been very good. I get questions from people that I know, and I've heard everything from, well, there's going to be a power plant, there's going to be a data center, there's going to be an enrichment plant, they're going to use the nickel ingots, they're going to reprocess the tails. There's just a lot of questions. And I am aware that the administration issued an executive order to NRC to speed up everything. And this is what I'm seeing, because I've had a lot of experience over the years reading and writing comments on NEPA documents, endangered species documents, and such. And I would say I was very surprised to just find out yesterday that there's already a draft EIS that the NRC has put out. It's out for public comment right now. That, as far as I know, there was no notice of the scoping in Paducah. I certainly wasn't aware of it, even though when the NRC certified the gaseous diffusion plant, when USEC took over, I was an intervener in that process, wrote pages and pages of comments about that, which that's not really relevant right now, but at least I should have been on the NRC's mailing list. So now there's still 41 days or something left to comment on the draft EIS, which in my opinion is a complete joke. An EIS is supposed to be detailed, and there's no details in that whatsoever. I also am aware that the site, and I've seen maps, but I don't know exactly where the site of this enrichment facility is compared to where the old site is, but there's still extensive contamination at the old gaseous diffusion site. There's the uranium burial grounds, there's classified landfill, there's the S&T landfills, and I mean, there's all the radiological buildings that they still don't know. They want to tear them down, maybe build a landfill out there. Those are all cumulative impacts not to mention the fact that it is a recognized, and it actually says in this draft environmental impact statement, it admits that it is a high-risk seismic zone. And so we're talking about, now the lady said 60 to 80 years. The application for this enrichment plant is for 40 years. And so we're talking about 40 years, and then what? Clean up. So you have, if you end up having an environmental problem, that's not, that plays against economic development from other industries that aren't as polluting. And I also found it ironic to bring up the carbon cycle when the current administration is shutting down wind and other renewable resources and trying to bring back coal and oil. And so I think the questions about exactly what is being planned out there really needs to be answered, because there was a front page story, headline story in the Paducah Sun with quotes from the judge executive about the Department of Energy establishing a categorical exclusion from NEPA for advanced nuclear reactors, not for the siting, authorization, construction, operation, recommissioning, and decommissioning, all with the Department of Energy not having to do any kind of environmental studies. And the judge executive was to me, in reading the article, implied that maybe there would be an interest in building a power plant out there at the same time. Okay, thank you. No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, the next on my list that indicated yes, they would like to speak is Reverend Charles Ulick, and I do very much apologize if I'm mispronouncing. And correct me when you come up if I do so, please.
It happens all the time. It's all right. Yes, my name is Reverend Charles Ulick. I'm a pastor and rector at Grace Episcopal Church here in Paducah. Here in Western Kentucky, love is something we live. We love to work. Our neighbors love to go to the lakes and to the land, and especially to be with our children, like most people. So when we talk about energy, even nuclear generational energy, we are really talking about stewardship, how we care for what God has entrusted to us. The psalmist in Psalm 24 tells us that the earth is the Lord's and all that is in it. We are not owners, we are caretakers. From the beginning in Genesis, humanity is given a vocation to till and to keep the garden, to use, yes, but also to protect it. That calling has not changed. It echoes in every decision we make about land, water, and the systems that sustain our lives. Our own Windleberry from Henry County reminds us that the care of the earth is our most ancient and most worthy responsibility. In a farming community, as in industrial, we understand that this instinctively, we know how and what we do upstream matters downstream. Having enough clean water is not optional. It is life. Healthy soil is not a luxury, it's a legacy. And good, honest work supports families in part of the dignity of God intends for every human being. Thomas Merton, also writing from his monastery in Bardstown, spoke of a deeper awareness of a recognition that everything is connected, that our actions ripple outward in ways we may not always see. To care for the environment is a care for one another, especially to our children and our elderly. So we hold important goods together in this evening: the jobs, strong communities, clean water, healthy land, and affordable energy. Faithful stewardship asks us to seek balance, wisdom, and care for all. And yet we must ask some very simple questions. How will this be done in a way that safeguards clean water for generations to come? How will the land be honored and preserved, not merely used? How will workers be protected and communities strengthened? And how will our children inherit not only opportunity, but a world still whole and beautiful? I believe these are holy questions, and we seek answers. We entrust that God's guidance will help you as a commissioner, and as we as a community reflect on this in a very loving in both personal and creational way, that we lead towards the future that all can flourish. Thank you.
Thank you. Palmer Stroup. Again, very, very much apologize if I pronounced that, mispronounced it, but please correct me.
It's Palmer Stroop. That's all right. Thank you all for being here tonight in Paducah. I really appreciate it. I find Western Kentucky often doesn't get a chance for its voice in these kind of matters, especially ones that are really big and impactful. I'll also speak to my own maybe personal thoughts and emotions, but I want to be conscious about my own place in Paducah. I'm a citizen. I've lived here most of my life. I've worked here professionally too, so my bosses are actually in the audience. But to that point, I do want to thank your effort to talk about the scientific elements of nuclear fission, specifically when it comes to reactor technology, because Paducah does have a history of nuclear development, but that's only been on the enrichment side. And any potential development when it comes to reactors would be brand new and foreign to us, especially as a community. I think this is a very complex topic and issue that has a great impact for our community, regionally, nationally too. To that point, I would really like to see more opportunities such as this to promote the actual educational components, the scientific components to the general public. This is a very complex science that I don't think many in Paducah are fully understanding the capabilities of. And so if there is further opportunity, I absolutely implore it for all organizations, whether those specifically here in the city of Paducah, Kentucky, but those on the state and federal level, to allow for significant input in education to these topics. I'm very curious to see the rest of the comments coming from the public tonight. I am very thankful for everybody that's been here tonight. Personally, I do agree with a lack of consistency in the information about the possible or possibly already ongoing developments at our current nuclear site when it comes to the development of two specific companies, Global Laser Enrichment and General Matter. Again, this is something that is personally above my individual pay grade and understanding of nuclear science. I'm a planner by trade. My education is actually in environmental sustainability from the University of Louisville, where you all presented just a few weeks ago. Again, I thank you for this opportunity, and I really encourage and welcome the information and feedback from the public this here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ralph Young. Thank you for having a name that's easy to pronounce. I'm happy to see that. Sorry, just tell us your name and then we'll start your 5 minutes.
Yeah. My name's Ralph Young, and I've been a resident of Paducah for over 40 years. I'm also a former chair of the Citizens Advisory Board that is still monitoring the cleanup activities from the former gaseous diffusion plant. I look at these times as similar to the time in 1942 that built the Kentucky Ordnance Works. Many of us know that it was the Kentucky Ordnance Works that turned into the Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant in 1951. Over the next 60 plus years, the plant would produce more low-enriched uranium than any other site in the U.S. or the world. After shutting down in 2013, the U.S. Department of Energy has expended hundreds of millions of dollars in cleanup to restore the site and repurpose it for future use. Paducah and the surrounding community area have dealt with nuclear facilities for over 75 years. People in this community trust that those companies investing in our community will create safe facilities that will overcome the catastrophic risk of earthquakes, natural disasters, and even the risks that we don't know about today. I would welcome these companies to our community and offer them any support that they might need. Let's hope that 100 years from today, more in our community will be celebrating the work that is taking place today. We are nuclear ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next I have on my list, and again, there'll be an opportunity if you didn't indicate yes, and you can change your mind and speak later. But the next on the list that I have is Joshua Massey.
Hello, thank you for your time. My name is Joshua Massey, and I'm a resident of Paducah, Kentucky. Have been for pretty much all of my life. So, according to the National Academy of Science in the summer of 2005, there is no safe dose of ionizing radiation exposure. The state of Kentucky does have the highest cancer rate of all incidents of cancer, every site, in the entire 50 United States, and we also have the highest cancer mortality rate of all U.S. 50 states. They would have us believe that this is due to tobacco usage and country ham. However, we are not the highest percentage consumers of tobacco, and we're not the highest percentage consumers of processed meats. I've brought with me two books that I've been studying recently. This one is called 100 Miles from Home. It's about the 6 nuclear contamination sites in the Ohio River Valley. Those are Mound, Paducah, Piketon, Fernald, Maxey Flats, and Jefferson Proving Ground. It was written by Carol Rainey. There's a foreword by Wendell Berry in it. And the story of each of these sites is very similar, wherein the Department of Energy promises high health and safety precautions taken and high economic opportunities, and they always fall short. I also have a book with me called Callous Disregard. It's about the story of Harold Hotsey Hargan, who worked at the Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant for 40 years. And he became a whistleblower about the illegal dumping and the unsafe practices that they were committing there at Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant. And in response to his bringing those concerns to awareness, the engineering company, Martin Marietta, decided to rotate him on the hottest, most radioactive jobs possible in order to kill him with cancer, which he was forced to retire in 1992 from his conditions. Let's see. There are currently 95,000 metric tons in temporary storage. Over 70 companies have sued the Department of Energy, for not finding a suitable permanent location for radioactive waste. I do not trust Global Laser Enrichment. I've read their proposal and their environmental surveys at the McCracken County Library. I think it's a whitewash. I do not trust GE Hitachi. They paid $2.7 million to settle allegations that it knowingly submitted false claims and concealed design flaws in a steam dryer component for their economic simplified boiling water reactor in 2014. In 2016, Purolite sued Hitachi regarding the alleged misappropriation of technology designed for repairing damage from the Fukushima disaster. And every lawsuit that has been filed against GE Hitachi in regards to the Fukushima disaster has basically been tossed to the side on the idea that the people that they subcontract are actually responsible. So it's also a matter of who takes the blame, who actually takes accountability whenever things do happen. And my experience, Paducah's experience, and as in all 6 of these cases, the response is pretty much the same, which is that it sort of just gets lost. The people get forgotten about, and people have to fight really, really hard to get any money for their medical bills after they've been contaminated in their areas. But I appreciate your time. Thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you. Bonnie Roblitz?
It's cold.
Koblitz. I'm so sorry. Please come forward. That's clearly A. That is my bad.
I'm sorry. Oh, maybe my writing was really bad. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment tonight. My name is Bonnie Koblitz. My address is 13050 Woodville Road, Kevel, Kentucky, which is 2 miles west of the DOE site. Many mistakes were made on that site decades ago, mistakes that cost workers their health, mistakes that contaminated groundwater, and thus the water wells on nearby residential properties. People were using those wells for drinking water. They've since had to switch to Kevel City water. I've been assured by county officials that the new enrichment processes are safe because it's a new technology and it's much better than before. That this waste uranium will be recycled into a grade that can be used for nuclear power or even nuclear weapons. And I like the idea of recycling. My concerns are that in the process, air, water, and soil will be further contaminated. Those same county officials have said that their number one priority is the safety and health of McCracken County residents. If that's true, then I suggest finding a neutral, impartial environmental company that can test the soils, water, and air before any more processes are started. This would give us a baseline of data so that regular monitoring could be done. Why not do this? Why can't nearby citizens be notified of testing results and the results of future monitoring? I personally am afraid of radioactive dust, contaminants released through the cleaning of nickel, and contaminants being released into the Ohio River and other groundwater sources. Health and safety of citizens, my own health and safety. Are the families who will move here to work at the facility aware of the history of this site? Do they want their spouses and children exposed to materials that will negatively impact their health? Recently, we were given notice about submitting public comments regarding categorically excluding this site from environmental regulations and health and safety regulations. Categorically excluding from environmental regulations. When working with such dangerous substances, why would you want to exclude this work from the most stringent regulations and monitoring? Now, I wrote all that anticipating that I'd have 2 or 3 minutes. So I want to continue with some notes that I made while I was waiting. I've had the impression that this project is already a done deal. And if that's the case, why is this the first public meeting that's been held, especially after the presentation that I just heard? Also, how does the Public Service Commission of Kentucky have any say on regulation of this work and this site if this site is a federal site? I don't understand why you guys would have any say.
So that's just a question. Let's see. You said, I believe in your presentation, that there were supposed to be 2 educational meetings and that there would be adoptions of resolutions or a county-wide ballot initiative. I don't know anything about those things that have happened, if they've happened. And I wonder when this community okayed this project, because I did not. The rest of my questions have to do with things like, I'm wondering about property values. I know you said that that was different in different areas. I'm wondering what mitigation plans are in place for road repair, traffic, noise, emergency responses. Is my time up?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Rex finishes now.
That's okay. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Erica Moore.
Hi, I'm Erica Moore. I live here in Paducah, and I've been here for about 20 years. And I'm here because I was under the misimpression, which I think that all of us kind of are, that this was going to be something about the project that the only thing that we really read about was in the Paducah Sun with the General Matters and going to be building their own sort of micro reactor, I guess, to power their own data center. So I was coming here to talk about that I didn't like the idea of this private company coming in and starting their own nuclear program here, which is what was basically in the newspaper and all that we know. So that's a big problem that everybody, I think, is pretty much, we're all together on, is that nobody knows what is going on here. So that's a big issue. So anyway, our community is being asked to accept 2 of the most resource-intensive, high-risk industry facilities in existence, stacked on top of each other, beside the river that we drink from. So we deserve to ask some hard questions before any permit is signed. The Ohio River is our water supply. Nuclear plants require enormous volumes of water for cooling and return it warmer, laden with potential trace radioactive isotopes. They are legally permissible in small doses, but accumulate over time. Roughly 5 million people downstream rely on this river for drinking water. The last water report from Paducah Water showed that radioactive particles are already detectable in our drinking water at about 20% of the legal limit. So adding any more radioactive contamination on top of what already exists is really not acceptable, particularly for a private nuclear company. I won't go into the data center issues that I have, but believe me, I have them. The flood risk is not theoretical on the Ohio River. The Ohio River floods, it is always flooded. A flooding nuclear cooling system is a crisis. A flooded data center releases battery, blah, blah, blah. When both facilities flood simultaneously, which is the only scenario this river permits, the hazmat risk to our community and downstream neighbors becomes acute and potentially irreversible. This is not, from what I've read in the newspaper, this is not routine economic development. We're not talking about, like you were saying, all these jobs and all of this economic development in this county. We're talking about a privately owned nuclear reactor that exists to generate power for a corporate data center. It's not to serve our community. The electricity stays behind the fence and the risks stay with our county. This is not a trade that we were offered. This is not being made for us. So nobody is doing us any favors by building a nuclear reactor for their own data center. Also, the jobs promise does not match the footprint. Combined, the 2 facilities may occupy however many acres and consume tens of millions of gallons of water weekly, draw hundreds of megawatts from the regional grid if they're not creating their own, while creating as few as 50 to 100 permanent jobs. That's tax incentives being offered to attract that project will reduce school and infrastructure funding for years. When those incentives expire, the infrastructure is where the water costs, emergency planning obligations, they remain permanently. Private ownership changes everything. A privately owned nuclear facility is not a public utility. It has no obligation to serve our grid. It will not have any obligation to reduce our energy cost or prioritize our community safety over their shareholder return. In the event of an incident, liability protections under the Price-Anderson Act cap what our community can recover, regardless of the actual damage. We bear unlimited environmental exposure, and their financial exposure is capped by federal law. So also, finally, the emergency planning zone is our community. So this nuclear facility requires a 10-mile immediate evacuation zone, a 50-mile protective action zone. And that's not the plant's problem. That's our roads, our schools, our hospitals, and our families. Every emergency plan, every drill, every real event falls on locals, local first responders, local government, not the private corporation that built the reactor. So what I am asking of this commission and of this panel here is a full independent, and of our city officials, please, a full independent environmental impact study before any permits are issued. A binding community benefit agreement covering water use, tax contributions, and local hiring. Disclosure of who bears liability in a flood, a leak, or an emergency, any emergency scenario. A public vote before any zoning changes are approved, and answers on how emergency evacuation would function for our schools and hospitals. We are not against progress. We're against accepting risk, all the risk, while a private corporation takes all the profit. This is our river, it's our community, and it should be our decision.
Thank you. Kim Wallen?
Yeah, I did.
You don't want to speak? Okay. Is there anybody else named Kim Wallen who did want to speak? If you change your mind, you'll get a chance. Okay. Gay Brewer?
I'll make written comment.
Okay. Keith Mert?
He didn't say what.
Okay. Do you know him? Okay. Craig Clymer?
Thank you for coming this evening. I'm Craig Clymer. I'm the judge executive with Craig County, so I manage the county outside of the city. I just want to say a couple of things just for, I always have to do that. Just really to the citizens of the county and the people who are here, they're mostly interested in this and wanting answers to questions. I manage a county. I'm a lawyer. I'm a retired state judge. Before I came into this position, I didn't know anything about nuclear. I'm trying to learn. I'm going around. I've been to D.C. several times, talked to the environmental management people. I'm trying to educate myself, but I'm relying on those experts to help me to understand. And I just want the people to understand that everyone in this community that's involved with this has your interests at heart. You see all the shenanigans, corruption, or whatever you want to call it, in our federal government, and I can see how maybe you might think that goes on at the local level as well. I can assure you that it does not. We are all about doing the best job we can to represent you. I have children. I have grandchildren. They're going to have children and grandchildren. And so as being the person elected to manage the county, and I see that as my job is first priority is to protect the people. Generally, you think of that as, well, that's law enforcement. But here it's not. It's environment. It's health of the workers. It's health of the neighbors. I met with Miss, I don't remember, I'll call you Bonnie because I don't remember your last name. But We sat down and talked, and I think we had a good conversation. But I'm going to learn anything I can provide to you. If you have questions that you feel like you don't get answered or you don't get listened to, I'm there in the McCracken County Courthouse. I'll be glad to make some time to talk to you. I probably can't answer your questions, but I bet you I can get somebody to address them. And if you don't, I bet you I can get their attention, because one thing I have been really impressed with is me as a guy that runs a relatively small county in Kentucky. I have been impressed by the attention that I can get with the United States Department of Energy, the environmental management people, and those who are involved in this. They do pay attention. They're listening. At some point, this community is going to not just, we're going to take back that land. That was the original plan, but it's shifted to leases for some reasons that these companies prefer to have a lease and be within the protected area, and all those attributes that go with that. But at some point, and then we're talking about the long game now, we're talking maybe it is 50, 60, 80, 100 years down the road, we're going to take that back. But there is federal law that has strong, I'm an attorney, retired judge, 23 years. I have looked at the indemnification agreement that DOE is bound by. We can say that, it's always possible that things change. I don't see that ever changing. And so DOE is responsible for any hazards, any problems that come on that site. The companies that are coming in, they are going to do surveys and address the issues, create a baseline of what is the danger level there now, what is the contamination level, so that we can see as time goes forward, as they go to work, assuming that gets done, that has this baseline increased, decreased, or stayed the same. So I just, I've been in government here since 1976. Most of you probably recognize me. Sat on the bench for 23 years as a state judge. All I can do is tell you, if you've got concerns, I'm going to do my very best to address them. I think all the other officials here will as well, and we'll get you the answers best we can. And we do have a couple of meetings coming up of public where we'll provide these folks under their guidelines are not going to be able to provide you explanations for things, but we will have subject matter experts to come in and address it at the lowest level or at the highest level or anywhere in between. That's just my promise to you. I hope you accept that in the spirit that it's given, and we'll go forward with this and see where we end up. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Judge. Stephanie Graves.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Graves. Thank you for the opportunity for all of us here. One thing that gives me hope is that I've got a whole room of people behind me, and I think a lot of you share the same concerns that I do. And unlike Judge Clymer, I don't have a lot of faith in corporations that they're going to do what's best for the people. In fact, I think there's a lot of evidence out there to the contrary, that their interest is in their shareholders and their bottom line. And as other people have said, there's been a lot of confusion about what exactly is going to go on at the former USEC site. I mean, they're talking about data center. There was a lot of public comment or ability for us to comment about that. There's another opportunity that's supposedly it's already planned, that has to do with what they're going to do with the tailings that are left over from the former USEC site. And I don't think there's been a lot of explanation about how the public is going to be protected with that. what I hear is talk about economic development, bringing in lots of jobs, and I think that our leaders seem to be interested in that and that alone, not the effects that it has on the people, the effects that it has on the environment. So what I see is a lot of emphasis on the money that's going to come into the community. From the discussion from the slide presentation that was put forth, they talked about taxes that would come into communities, and that's going to be a big driver. I mean, yes, it'd be great to have that kind of money, but at what cost? And I think that a lot of us are very concerned about the cost that these kinds of projects, a nuclear power plant, would have. While we were talking, I looked up, I thought, okay, what was the last nuclear site that was built in the country? And that was the Vogel site that you spoke about. And I want to read just the first paragraph of an article that was written February 15th, 2024. The expansion of the Vogel nuclear power plant in Burke County near Augusta, Georgia, stands as the only new atomic reactors built in the United States in the past 30 years, and the most expensive power plant ever built on Earth. This story is one of chaos, broken promises, cost overruns, and blown deadlines. So off the rails is this fiasco. It is most probably the last large-scale pressurized water reactor that will ever come online in the U.S., and I would hope to God that's true. I don't want this kind of thing in my community, and I don't think a lot of us do either. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Hopper.
No, I don't know what state of mind I was in. I know things when what I'm talking about.
All right. If your state of mind shifts again, you'll be welcome to come up later on. Ronnie Kavanaugh? Kavanaugh?
Well, bottom check out, I will say a bit about it.
Name's Ronnie Kavanaugh. Born and raised here. So I've lived in Paducah 57 years. This community, I've had family members and friends that's always worked out at USEC over the years. When it shut down, this community almost shut down on industry stuff. So I look forward to having that industry here to keep our young men and women, our young kids that are graduating, looking for a future, keeping them here in our communities. All the jobs that's going to be created off this, the businesses and everything, this community is going to grow and strive for years to come. I know there's a lot of questions on the nuclear stuff, a lot of stuff people don't understand, but we'll get that information out to everybody and where they can know everything that's going on. Regulations for this stuff now is a whole lot better than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. Power generation, we're needing to double our power generation in the next 10 to 15 years, what we've done over the last 60 to 70 years. So these nuclear reactors are going to be part of the answer. Nobody wants solar, nobody wants the wind, but we got to get the power somewhere, and it ain't always going to be coal or gas. So thank y'all for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Drew Hill or Hilly?
Billy, you got that, Tom? Drew Hilly, live here in Paducah. Just a quick comment. Given the United States Geological Service estimates of a 25 to 40% chance of a magnitude 6.0 or greater New Madrid earthquake in the next 50 years, and given the Paducah nuclear redevelopment area sits near the northern end of the New Madrid seismic zone, I think the public deserves a clear explanation of the worst-case off-site consequences to Paducah and surrounding communities if a 6.0 or greater earthquake causes structural damage, loss of power, fire, chemical release, radiological release, or failure of safety systems at the facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Marshall Davis? I'll give a minute just in case he was in an overflow room. They're saying no. Okay. I can come back and call that name again. I want everyone to get a chance to speak if they'd like to. Sarah Lewis Meyer.
My comment is ours today.
Okay. And Joy Ray. WRAY. Joy Ray. Reed Draper. Okay, we'll wait just a minute and give someone time to get here. Hoping they can hear us, but it looks like Reed Draper. Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm getting a no now. Okay. I can call that name again too. Glenn Puertolarno. How close did I get?
Close enough. I just ask my people to call me at work Dr. Glenn.
Dr.
Yes. Anyway, I'm Glenn Puertolarno, and I've been here in Paducah. Paducah adapted me very well since 2009. And I hear everyone's comment, and truly, those are very respectable information that you have given me. The only reason why I'm here is, one, I saw in the television that there is this thing going on in the nuclear plant or nuclear facility. In fact, me and my wife visited the place a couple of months ago to see how far this is from our location also. And truly, I don't know. I may be educated, but I don't know anything about it. And the only way for me to relieve the anxiety or the worry about things, concern, is to learn more about it, to know more about it. I know that the only thing certain about life could be change. Change will always happen, and we just have to adapt to changes. I understand the need for energy, for more efficient energy. I understand the need for it to be lesser cost for a lot of people. So it's very important, I would say. I would tell a lot of times the importance of having a reality, to know and understand things, and to have a lesser expectation on things. Because just like what I've heard from other people commentary about corporate, maybe the only thing really they have is the bottom line, but we have to also understand, maybe put a little bit of lower expectation so I would be happier. So happiness is equal to reality over expectation. The more realistic I am and less expectation, I'll probably be happier. I welcome progress. I welcome, this could be an opportunity for the community, but it's good to hear ways on managing the risk. I think that's the bottom line also here, to know how do we manage the risk. For me, I wasn't sure really how community ready is Paducah for this. But maybe more education, once again, is being called for, so we would have better understanding and our the things that makes us worry can be addressed. Again, this can be also an opportunity. Good.
Thank you. Okay. Reed Draper. Sorry about that.
Exactly the issue you discussed at the beginning. Thanks for calling me back.
Reed Draper. I live here in Paducah and work here at the college. So thank you to the college for hosting this tonight. And thank you for coming here to explain a number of things. I appreciate all the health concerns people have talked about. I think if we took a show of hands, there would be quite a few people in this room who were part of the government settlement for illnesses caused by the previous plan. My grandfather passed away, cancer of an undetermined origin, at which time his settlement went to his daughters. I think that's a pretty common story here in Paducah. So my concerns about this plan especially are, I've been to a couple of the groundbreakings and I've listened to a number of the interviews. I've heard almost no comments about how things will be different this time around. A great deal of the issue was we had DOE, then Union Carbide, I believe, then Lockheed Martin, finally USEC now. Those handovers on each generation seemed to degrade in terms of how things were controlled and processed, which led to storage facilities that were substandard. How is that going to be different this time? It's great to hear we have plans. We'll explain things. We're going to do these things. But I'm not hearing any specific plans. And it sounds like we're way down the path to building this. The information tonight you showed was very helpful, and thank you for putting up there. But in terms of specifically talking about our plant here, laser diffusion, I saw almost nothing. It makes me a little uncomfortable that reactors were your main comment. I'd love to know if there is a current plan or even studies right now saying Paducah, Kentucky already has fuel storage. It has laser enrichment. That'd be a great place to put a power plant. I haven't heard it, but I have a tough time believing that's not at least being looked at. I'm feeling a little cursed these days. I grew up in Moorhead with Maxey Flats 10 miles away. I moved to Las Vegas. I went through 30 years of Yucca Mountain and listening to Harry Reid and working on that. And I saw how the plans there were that the number one site, I believe, was Arkansas with its salt mines. Number two was in Texas. Vegas wasn't even in the top numbers, but there was not a lot of representation for Nevada and for Las Vegas. So Texas had a former president. Arkansas had, I believe, the current president at the time. And we know why that didn't happen then. So I worry that Paducah, and I think you mentioned that Maxey Flats and Paducah were sort of the test bed for what there was a need for nuclear regulation. So I'm feeling like Kentucky is becoming sort of a guinea pig at this rate. I think the concern voiced by the folks here that I would love to see far more information presented, especially here locally, the folks who will have to deal with it. People have mentioned our first responders, our power generation, our sewage systems, our water treatment systems, along with the several hundred miles downstream of us, will be the ones dealing with it. So I think the lack of transparency, there are, I believe, NDA agreements that were put in place over this for certain city officials. Why you would need to have NDA agreements for private corporations against tax dollars coming from our tax base to them, I don't understand that one. So I think there's not been enough transparency in this project. It was a wonderful slideshow, but showing dad and relatives in the nuclear Navy, those are very specific instances of small nuclear reactors used, and they have been incredibly successful. But I don't think that's remotely a good comparison to large-scale private corporation nuclear power production. Thank you for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. And I hope this is a first step in this process instead of a final step going forward in this process.
Thank you.
Okay, Harmony, Parallel. Okay, and we'll wait a few minutes for someone to come from overflow room. While we're waiting, I'll just reiterate that this is a 6-city tour. We don't work for anyone who's developing a nuclear facility here, and our presentation is not specific to any one city. We're doing a statewide tour to talk about nuclear industry in general, as we were tasked to do by legislative resolution. So, hello. And correct me if I mispronounced your name.
Oh, no, you're fine. My name is Harmony Parallel, and I am a resident here of Paducah, Kentucky, have been all of my life. Thank you for your time, first of all. So I wanted to start by referencing something that was said earlier in the presentation, which was that there are no currently operating advanced nuclear reactor facilities in the United States. With that being said, I, want to ask the question, how can we know that it is safe if there are no facilities operating currently that are exactly like it? And if it is safe, how do we know it will be safe on the scale that it will be done in Paducah? I also want to reference something said earlier, that there are no places existing currently to put the spent fuel rods. And I think that something like this to this scale should not be built if there is no actual, plan for where those things can go currently. You mentioned that, one of the issues with the Vogel plant was that it wasn't well thought out, and there were a lot of issues because it wasn't well thought out. And it seems like we're already jumping the gun on building this thing when a lot of these processes don't seem to be super well thought out. I think I'm definitely echoing a lot of other people by saying Paducah, seems to be the guinea pig of a lot of things like this. I have a quote here from an interview done, or an article from the Washington Post from 1999, from a worker who worked at the Paducah gaseous diffusion plant. And it says, "I was told by my superior in so many words that this is Paducah and it doesn't matter here," in reference to the contamination from the site. So I think that, we all know the history of the Paducah gaseous diffusion plant, or maybe we don't, but I think Paducah has been trampled over before, not really considered important. We're an impoverished community, and I don't trust these companies to have our best interest at heart. The Department of Energy has a history of lying about the safety of its processes, and I think it's nice to say that things have changed, and it would be really nice to believe that and believe that, this kind of progress is possible. But to have, an agency that has a history of lying, and that's not just hearsay. You can look at it in local newspapers, the history of the Department of Energy saying things will be safe and not following through on that promise. And I don't think that our community or any community deserves to have something put there without, knowing that the people have our best interest, who are putting these things in place. I also want to bring up, so, we're talking about how these are the first steps, but this is from the energy.gov website. And it says, "The U.S. Department of Energy Office of Environmental Management crews have begun clearing trees at the Paducah site to prepare for new tenant General Matter to eventually build a uranium enrichment plant on about 100 acres of leased land." So they are already clearing trees out from this property when this project has not even been approved. It keeps getting called a proposed action, but it's not really proposed if they are already making the steps to carry it out. And I've read the draft environmental impact statement at the McCracken County Library, and there are a lot of mentions of how this will have no significant impact to the human environment, and how there are plans in place to keep people safe, but there are no specifics on what those safety measures are. And it also contradicts itself by saying that, there won't be very many emissions. And then on the next page, it says, let's see, with regard to potential routine radiological impacts, operation of the proposed Paducah Laser Enrichment Facility could result in radiation exposures by members of the public via ingestion or inhalation of uranium released from the facility or from direct external exposure to radiation emitted by the uranium at the facility. So it goes back and forth between saying things like that and then saying that there are little to no risks. It capitalizes the word small a lot when in regard to risks, but there are hundreds of pages that say small risks. And when you look at those as a cumulative thing, they add up. There's a lot of risks. And not only will there be one laser enrichment facility, there will be the one from GLE, there will be the one from General Matter, and then possibly the Data AI Center as well. When you look at the cumulative environmental risks of all of those things combined, I think that adds up to a lot. And I don't think that that is something that we should have in our community. Also, I read up one of the dump sites listed in the proposed action at the McCracken County Library. Construction of proposed action would require filling an unnamed tributary to Little Bayou Creek and small wetland areas identified in the Paducah Laser Enrichment Project area, creating moderate impacts to surface waters. Little Bayou Creek already has a history.
Your time is up, but I'm trying to let you wrap up.
No, you're good.
Please feel free to submit longer comments, though, in writing.
Thank you
And
for
they
your
will be
time.
read. Thank you. Daisha or Deshae Johnson? Okay. We'll give her a minute to come in. And we're about to the end of the yeses. So I'll go back through and recall anyone whose name I called earlier to make sure they didn't want to come forward and speak. And then give anyone else an opportunity. And I'll just remind everyone that case number is up on the screens, 2025-00186. And just make sure and put that case number on if you submit written comments. Tonight's comments will be put into the public record, so they become part of the case as well. While we're waiting on Daisha Johnson to come forward, if anyone else has changed their mind and would like to speak, please just come forward. Hello, sir. Tell us your full name, please.
Yes, my name is Jerry Bertoni. I just want to say that global warming is a reality, and it is intensifying. And if we don't address that, another way of putting it is Mother Earth is very sick. And if we don't address that, the earth changes that are going to come are going to be catastrophic.
Thank you, sir.
That's Chair.
Hi, my name is Catherine Karanongan. This will be really short. I just want to say publicly in front of our city and county officials that I kindly but firmly expect this to be a ballot issue. I think that we as a community have the right to vote on whether or not we accept this proposal. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to come forward?
Hi, I'm Michael McVicker. I'm a father, a Paducah small business owner, and I'm running for State Representative District 3. I believe the priority in government should be transparency and accountability. So let's talk about the unique issues and the worry in the community of lack of oversight regarding General Matters project at the DOE site. So General Matter was incubated in January 2024 by Peter Thiel's venture capital firm Founders Fund with the explicit ideas of move fast, cut regulations, and break stuff until it eventually works. This isn't just Silicon Valley rhetoric anymore. It is corporate philosophy now backed by a $900 million Department of Energy contract awarded this past January and a $1.5 billion total investment slated for our community. Peter Thiel himself holds a seat on their board, ensuring that this disruptor mindset remains at the core of their operations. We are seeing this break stuff mentality being institutionalized at the federal level by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's Part 53 framework, which was finalized just last week on March 26 to reduce regulatory burdens for companies exactly like General Matter. This brings us to the local level. Our local politicians are clearly out of their range of expertise on this. It's been a long time since we've dealt with some of these projects, and they keep saying it over and over again in public. So with that, the corporate corruption that we've seen in the Trump administration and the actions of representatives like Randy Bridges, who is an ALEC state chair, which is a corporate think tank, and sits on the Kentucky Nuclear Energy Development Authority alongside Mayor Bray, and they both signed non-disclosure agreements with these companies on being on the board. So by its statutory definition in Senate Bill 198, the Kentucky Nuclear Energy Development Authority is a non-regulatory body. Its legal mandate is to promote the industry, not protect its citizens. People in McCracken County are rightfully scared that our modern-day robber barons are paying to change the rules while playing with uranium in our backyard. If our local leaders are sitting on the authority designed to be a cheerleader for this project and the federal government is stripping away regulatory hurdles, my question to the commission is this: who is actually acting as the watchdog? How can the PSC ensure that just and reasonable mandate of this commission isn't being sacrificed for the move fast and break stuff whims of creepy venture capitalists? And how can there be accountability when there is a chain of corporate-owned politicians that are changing the rules for Jeffrey Epstein and J.D. Vance's friend Peter Thiel? Thank you.
Are there others who want to come forward?
I'd like to thank the commission for being here today and for offering this. My name's Jim Rogers. I've lived in McCracken County for 60 years, and I've worked at the site for 33 years. The site has been operated by multiple contractors. I have worked for 4 of them myself. Personally, I feel like that the safety of the employees out there has always been at its best. I do understand that mistakes were made. I also understand that this was a young science when it came to McCracken County back in 1950. And I also know for 75 years we've learned, not just us, but this nation has learned. As I stand here, I know that there's others behind me that has worked at the site, some of them through construction. I know my building and trades brothers are here. And I know we've always felt proud and good at what we did there. We supplied what was needed by this nation at the time it needed it. At the end of the day, energy for this nation is at a crisis point. Nuclear energy is coming, whether it comes to Paducah or it doesn't come to Paducah. Everyone sitting here tonight is enjoying the fact that we're sitting in here in the cool and not outside in the heat, that we've got adequate lighting, and that we can hear from an amplified speaker. Without this energy, none of that would be possible. The crowd wouldn't be near as big, and there wouldn't be that many people wanting to say anything. Personally, I believe McCracken County and the city of Paducah are nuclear ready, and I'm proud of the fact that we are. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Just tell us your name.
Amber Galloway. I, like many people, probably don't want to be here speaking at a public town meeting. Nobody wants to be the town crier. or call their senators or representatives. We elect our officials in hopes that they're going to do what is best by what they campaigned on. And it's resounding from what we've heard tonight that not a lot of our citizens know what is going on with this facility, why it is going on. We do know what we've heard about nuclear. I'm very interested to hear more about the little bayou flood that lady was talking about. I used to deliver mail out in this area in Metropolis Lake, Noble. If we got an inch of rain in an hour, yards would pool. It's a very high flood zone. It concerns me seeing the categorical exclusions that were included in this build. It's just amazing what has become that is not human environment in that list. But we all chose not too long ago between a mayoral race that promised community building and tourism. And we all saw not too long ago our taxes, our property tax assessment values fly. My parents saw their home double. And a little pushback and reconciliation occurred. As that's what's needed to build this sports complex, this hotel. We see tourism as a great money maker and putting us on the map for small town charm in a lot of publications. It's very exciting. It seems like we see a new small business open up every day. Over the stark contrast of his opponent that said he wanted industrialization. We all came out in droves to vote for Mayor Bray, because we don't want to see smokestacks and more 18-wheelers cross a bridge that has been under construction for 14 years now and should probably have its own civil class action in the amount of deaths and accidents. And if transportation is one of the most dangerous things of nuclear, that's certainly something to think about. Judge Clymer, I'm glad that he mentioned his NDA, as he just mentioned yesterday, as a response to a petition on change.org. I'm fully supportive of AI, and there's a lot of talk that this nuclear facility is going to power a data center, which we don't want. And I'm just not sure how the city can reconcile putting all of this money and taking all of our tax dollars to build up our communities, beautify our city, and hope for tourism, while also set to destroy it with nuclear and a data center. And just like Catherine said, if we put this to a vote, Paducah will overwhelmingly say no, we don't want this. Thank you for your attention.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Tom Barron. I've been in the nuclear business since 1974, and if you want to turn off the lights, I'll show you I do not glow. But when we talk about what your original intention of these hearings tonight are, it is about proposed nuclear energy power plants. Well, out at the DOE site, there has not been any nuclear power plants. There is not going to be any nuclear power plants with the current activities that are going on with global laser enrichment and General Matter. As people have, some other speakers have talked about, they are going to be enrichment facilities, and of the newer variety than what the old enrichment facilities were like out there in the past. I do want to say the gentleman that was up here just recently, I agree with him 100% about everybody that worked out there at that facility did their very best and worked safe as much as they could. Because I can tell you, when I came there in 1986, I took a position that was the Contamination Control Program Manager to help get safety even at a higher level of rigor than what it was under the prior DOE's administrations. And I worked on those DOE Tiger teams. and went from different DOE sites, ensuring that they were operated safely. I mean, I've even been to some sites, I shut down activities. I got people fired because they did not follow the rules. Well, they tried to snow me with some BS. So nuclear energy, yes, it's a risk. It's a risk going home tonight, pulling out on a road and somebody running a red light and running into you. We all take risks. We've had a 70-year history of dealing with a risk-based industry. We've learned from that. Now, not to say we're perfect, but I'm still doing the business of doing audits and ensuring that facilities are operated safely, whether it's under the new contractor or whether it's with other clients that I work with throughout this region, ensuring that their quality assurance and their safety programs meet federal requirements. And in the case of those facilities that are coming in, GLE, General Matter, they're going to be under the NRC. They're private companies. They have to be licensed by the NRC. They just cannot walk in there and put up a facility and start doing whatever they say they're going to do. Just doesn't work that way. And I've worked with the NRC. And I know they're going to have to go through a rigorous process to get their license so they can do what they're saying that they want to do. And for people that are quoting some of these other documents out there regarding GLE or General Matter, and I don't work for them, so let's get that straight, that you look at their SARS, that's the Safety Analysis Report. That tells you everything you need to know about the safety activities, systems in place, and how they're going to keep it safe, how they're going to keep their people safe, how they're going to keep their neighbors safe. And believe me, I don't want dirty water. I don't want to breathe radioactive products or any other kind of product. But we do have the capabilities to have safe operations in this industry. And any future power plant that may come out there, as is the purpose of your hearing tonight, then we'll tackle that when someone in Kentucky, lifts the regulations that you cannot have a nuclear power plant in the state. So I thank you that you're here getting this feedback, and I thank everyone that's giving the feedback. I'm giving a perspective from 50 years with submarines, DOE, and the NRC. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Thank you for being here. My name is Dixie Lynn. I am a resident of West Paducah, live within just a couple of miles from the current site. So in addition to the environmental concerns, I also have concerns about property value. Earlier in the host community considerations, it mentioned property valuation changes may not be uniform. As a resident, I'm really curious, how is this going to affect my home, its value, anything along those lines? I've heard of any information about this. Also, I would like to add on public record, like the other woman said, with all of our elected officials here, I strongly urge you to have this as a ballot measure and let the residents decide, and not just, what was the quote? Not just an adoption of a resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, as Kenya said earlier, we certainly appreciate everyone who took the time to come out, everyone who cared enough to come out and talk or listen. I'll stay just another minute or two in case anybody else still is needing to come forward. Yep.
Hi, my name is Chris Chapman. I live in Murray, Kentucky, and I have a small farm in Sturgis, Kentucky. Wasn't planning on speaking, so my thoughts might be a little scattered. I'm mostly willing to meet you guys because you represent us. You're what saves us, our rate base. You guys are our only protection, keeping our rates good. I'm not from Paducah, so your mission is to look at nuclear around the state. I'm not pro-nuclear or anti-nuclear. I am very pro-solar, wind, things like that. I like to look at it as the cost. Right now, nuclear is levelized as the most expensive form of electricity. We're probably going to need it, but the reality is, right now there's no such thing as a small modular nuclear. Right, all the small projects are experimental. There's never been a modular one. That means implies more are coming. They may come out. They didn't do it in the 60s because it didn't make economic sense because it's the same 7 levels of security to secure them. So the cost benefit didn't make sense for small. I think because the Vocal plant was so overdone, not just late, 15 years late and double the cost, 18 billion to 38 billion. They're changed tack to the small nuclear because it sounds like it's going to be more palatable. But to that one woman's point earlier, that there are none that are working. That diagram of the nutrient plant was a diagram. It wasn't a picture. Not against it. I hope it works, and I hope it's funded by industry and they make it work. But the reality is we need the power now. Those ideas are 40 years away. 5, 6, 7 years, be optimistic to build one of those. And they're experimental. The one at TVA's buildings, 100 megawatts, 300 megawatts, whatever. We need 54 of them. It's a 50-year project. But everybody knows we need power now. 74% of all power in America in the last 4 years, new power, has been produced by solar and wind. We just kneecapped the whole industry this year. So as Kentuckians, we shouldn't ignore it. It's going to be all above. We're going to need nuclear. We're going to need in the future, but it's a long way away. And it's very expensive. So let's not look, solar's quick, it's 18 months, it lasts for 25 years with no input cost. In that 25 years, we can develop nuclear, we can solve other problems. But right now we're ignoring it, I think, to our peril. So things to consider. You're there for us, I really appreciate it, but use the environmental groups in the state, Kentucky Resource Council, KD4, Sear Club. They have good people with good research. You're being bombarded by the industry all the time. I understand you're under a lot of pressure. Use us, use all the resources, because you're what stands between us and high rates. We don't want to have the cost of these plants. If an industry wants them, let the industry pay for them. The ratepayers shouldn't have to burden an experiment. And right now they're just experiments on the nuclear side. Again, not against it. I hope it works. I hope to figure it out. China's building 10 a year, big plants, but it's a different system. They're used as peakers. They don't have to make a profit. It doesn't work here in America. We're profit driven. So these are all considerations for you as they're coming into our state. What's best for our ratepayers? Behind the meter solar, distributed resources, saving energy you don't even need to build it. All these things should be part of it. They're being ignored right now. Those things what you need to stand up for us to force those in. We can do all these things. Even abhorrent as extending coal plants are for me, it's on the table, but don't wipe out all the stuff that's right in front of us. It's real easy, low-hanging fruit. I think that's all I need to say. Thanks. I thank what you do.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marcia Barrenter, and I live in Paducah, and I just have a question. I really appreciate the presentation that was earlier, and I have taken in all the questions and the comments that everyone has given. My question is this a done deal? There has been some input about having a vote. Everyone is here. You see in the newspapers they had the groundbreaking, all the announcements. What is the intent for these hearings that you're all having if it is a done deal? That's my question. Thank you.
So we're not associated with the project in Paducah. This is a statewide presentation about future potential for nuclear and what are people's thoughts. So those questions would have to be answered by someone else. There's not been an application to us. Gotcha. Okay.
Hello. Hello, my name is Tamara Tracy. I live in Paducah. And like most of the speakers, I didn't really plan to come up here and talk, but I do have a couple of points I'd like to raise for the Public Service Commission that I have not heard discussed. But before I get into that, I would like to reemphasize the testimony of Mr. Massey and Mr. Draper and Ms. Graves, because they do reflect my thoughts on the matter at this point in time. You, as the Public Service Commission, you're responsible for our safety as well as the utility rates. And I would hope that the commission takes its broad view of our safety and think about these large development projects like this and go to the community and look at what happened. Paducah is not unfamiliar with a massive project like this. And as other people have mentioned, mistakes were made. I would like to think that we could learn from our mistakes. One gentleman said about nuclear energy, there's tons more regulations. Well, regulations are the scar tissue of misdeeds. They don't come without a price. But we can change that if we open and think broadly and think of things in advance. When this thing hits, which both projects, when it hits, there's going to be a massive influx of people. Our taxes or they're not going to start paying taxes right away, but we're going to have to pay for all that right up front. I, for one, am a little bit more used to having the commercial developer, I mean commercial in the broad sense, pay for some of that up front first. They should be paying for widened roads. They should be paying for enhanced and larger school area buildings and more teachers and stuff like that, because we're not going to get those tax dollars until after we've already received the burden of these things. Those are just real basic things that every community is going to have to need to be addressed. Otherwise, they're all going to be caught short. So please, look at the past and learn from it. Thanks.
As soon as I pick up the microphone, that usually triggers someone to come forward. All right. Thanks again so very much for having us in your community and for being so civil and kind to one another as everyone spoke tonight. And if there's nothing further, then we're adjourned.